digital distractions. Whatever that might be. I think we can look at digital distractions in a number of ways. I think we pretty much discussed that. I think we pretty much have a good idea of what that is. I talked a little bit about the mismatch of goals. About our goals as faculty is to get them to learn and be critical thinkers. Their goal is to get through the program and get to a career. And so I think, a lot of times and I'm trying to learn how to do this myself, is got to think back and think of the student in the seats. What is it they're after? And what are we doing to help them get there, but also while at the same time not compromising what they really need to get there. And that's kind of that tricky path that we're all balancing. The entitlement attitudes, consumer first attitudes, talked about this. Some of the other things that have kind of come up that in this sort of area, since I've done some research, is there's plenty of evidence that of college students, and probably applies to pharmacy students as well, nutrition and sleep deprivation. They're staying up all night studying, they're doing whatever. They're coming to class, they're coming to 8 o'clock class on 5 hours of sleep. Maybe if we're lucky. And so, if I go to anywhere and I'm going on something on 5 hours of sleep, I'm going to get sleepy. I don't care what it is. Even if I'm interested in it, I'm going to get sleepy. And the moment that it begins the slightest bit of lack of interest, then, my eyes start hurting. So, we have that. And it also goes with the nutrition deprivation of, I hear what these students eat. So I'm a very health-conscious person in what I eat, and my students figure this out over time. Then they want to start talking about what they eat and what I eat. And so they tell me, they're living off granola bars in the morning, just getting granola bars and coffee throughout the day, because they don't, some of it is economic based, some of it is based on the fact they don't want to take the time to sit down to cook a meal. It's like, okay, I can eat a couple granola bars, drink some coffee, that'll be good to go, that'll get me through the next hour. So those are, I don't know how we deal with that.
We can do a barbecue right before lunch.
Barbecue, I said cook. That will probably also have your course evaluations, I would dare say. So it could be 2 for 1. So something we haven't discussed yet is the student extracurricular culture. And there's always extracurricular. So what happens outside those classroom walls of what's going on? So there are lots and lots of sort of demands on time. Some of them that were discussed in that video that we watched, some of them not. And I don't know what, here being a new school, you probably don't have as many different types of things as we do at KUK. There are dozens of organizations. It's gotten so many organizations and student groups that there have been, conversations with administration and with some of the student leaders of trying to pare back because there is so much, and you have goal-driven students who want to exceed and perform. They want to do all of them. They want to be in all of these leadership things, and several of them want to be leaders in everything. So that what has slowly tend to happen over time is, they shift this much in the classroom, this much for extracurricular, to where this is like, okay, now the extracurricular stuff, even though good stuff, is taking away from their study.
One thing that I'll add to that is that even from when I was in school, not a lot of people had to work to get a job after school, but now if you're not getting a retail shade during school, you won't get a retail job. And if you're not in a hospital pharmacy, you might not get a residency, for example. So now it's almost like you have to work, whereas when I was in school, I didn't work for my 3rd year just to get hours to take the board. So that's
Oh, that's good.
Salad Mary.
All right, what else? So now we have to start, and Evan and I were kind of having a little conversation earlier, is looking at us. What are we doing that may be causing stuff? And so, I think one of the big things is information overload that can become a problem at certain courses, at certain classes within certain courses. Is that we, as the experts, feel, okay, you need to know this, whatever this is. And so we try to give it to them, so that we're trying to give this to you, and we end up to the point of giving maybe too much information to where it makes them, it becomes so, and I've heard this from students, there's so much, it's like they look at it, it's like, I can't, forget it, I can't get all this. So they back off because it's so much. One of the things that we're doing at Kentucky is we're going through a curricular reform process right now. We're probably right in the middle of it, and I've been very involved with this. And one of the things that our reform group has looked at is one of it is the information overload. So we have, I think it's the second most credit hours of any pharmacy school in the nation, and it's happened over time because every time something new comes up, okay, well we got to add this, but we've never taken away anything. Just sort of like you buy new clothes, you buy a new shirt, buy a new pair of pants, it goes in the closet, but you never throw away the old ones that you never wear. So it's just accumulated, so it's so much, and then specifically in some courses, that has become an issue that it just causes students just to say it's too much, I can't do it, so they back off from it. So we're looking now to kind of pare down the curriculum to say, okay, what is it they really need to know? They really need to, when they say what do they really need to know, what do you really need to know from me, and hear from me, or see from me, and what do we need to be doing to teach you to get the rest of the stuff on your own when you need it, as you need it. We'll see how this kind of plays out, but I think it's a big step that we're looking at, and I don't know what your thoughts are in your curriculum here. If you do too much, you're right on, not enough.
I'll ask them.
We haven't been through it all yet.
You haven't been through it
So
all
we
yet.
have to look at it.
Okay. So once you get through the full cycle and you get everybody
I
through.
think we need to reevaluate after we look at the full cycle. Yeah, we don't know yet.
I think we do have the benefit, being a new school, is we did look, like you said, we didn't have all those additional things. So we kind of had our end goal in mind when the curriculum was planned. So it's not like a program that's been in existence for many years and, you have the one course, we can't get rid of this course,
Right, right. Yes.
So it always stays there, whether it's relevant to today or the future pharmacist or not, so.
Good. So there you go, there's an advantage you have. This wasn't necessarily, I don't necessarily think this was my thing, but this was something that I have read in the literature about engaging students. And it sounds kind of odd saying this in a pharmacy school, professional school, as lack of challenge. But, because it's such a difficult program, but really what we ask them to do when the way they're being assessed, are they being challenged enough so that, oh my gosh, I've got this, I really have to bear down and pay attention and study this, or I won't get through. I don't know from your end if you see this or ever thought, I had never thought about this in a professional school program. I can easily see it in an undergraduate program, a lack of challenge to students that are very bright and like, okay, this comes easy to them, so they disengage because it's not hard enough. And I'll speak from the experience of even from my daughter, so she's in grade school, and so she's had different teachers throughout. She's 8 years old. This year is the first time we've ever known since she's in 3rd grade. She's got a teacher, a newer teacher, who doesn't really give them homework. Which, in 3rd grade, I didn't have homework, but I mean, it was a different kind of, I didn't really have homework until I was in 8th grade. I was able to do it all at school. But she has had homework in 1st grade and 2nd grade. Not a lot, it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes of stuff of reading and doing things. So this year she did not. She had disliked school this year. She has always liked school. She's very, she's been very good. She's very, top of her class with stuff, but she has not liked school. And we have, through her, we kind of figured out it's just not hard for her. So she doesn't like going because she gets bored. And so, some of our students, are they bored, or is it because we're making it too easy on them?
I think when you look at the lack of challenge and you go back to the idea of are people coming or not coming to class to participate and learn. So I would say a lack of challenge is if a student or learner can come to class or refer to the PowerPoint only and be successful on an assessment to the point where they learn what's going on, and they don't have to be there because it now just becomes a different form of I can read, I can take an assessment, and I can get the grades I need. Then that is a lack of a challenge. Because then what do they do in the classroom that adds value to that learning process?
Then, does that mean online programs are not challenging?
No. But it's the point of this is online programs have points of engagement through real-time or synchronous or asynchronous chat rooms and engagement activities. It's just they've taken the engagement into a different facet. But it's the idea of what's the value to learning of what you do with them. And I think part of the lack of challenges is if they can just go through, look at the PowerPoint and getting the A or the B they want.
Why not?
Yeah.
Kind of goes along with one of the next one. Okay, so our curriculum, this probably doesn't apply as much as you now as it does for us. Like you said, you still not been through it all. Once you get through it all, yeah, you probably need to look at it and see, okay, this is our curriculum, what we've designed, and the way we've designed it, the way we've designed deliver it, does it promote lack of engagement? I think, and you can always speak bluntly, I think our curriculum, the way we have designed and taught it, which is not drastically different than it was 20 years ago. Content's changed, a little bit, classes changed, courses are changed, use a little bit more technology than then, but for the most part, you know, we're looking now with the students that come to us today with all of their attributes, the things that they do, our curriculum doesn't do it. I mean, it promotes a lot of disengagement. So, like I said, some of the things that we're looking at doing, and maybe we'll just kind of discuss some of those this afternoon. So this one, I'll let you guess here a little bit. What do you think I mean by this one? It's an anomaly reference. Okay, so we're parsing this. This might be a stepwise process. So we got that part. So what?
They're just interested in getting the degree and moving on.
Okay, so you very, very close there. But close enough to count on. So students, and I think everyone was looking at this, but students can look at this educational process as a game. They look at it as a, not as, okay, this is, fun game, but, okay, what are the rules? What do I have to do to win the game? What's the best way to win the game? So in Monopoly, you want to get the properties. You don't want to put all your money on the railroads. You want to get your money in Park Place and Boardwalk, right. So get those, the high property, and then do what with it? Then get your houses on it and your hotels. And that's, there's the strategy to do this and to win. And so students well know, they'll figure the game out, whatever it is, and however we change it. Okay, what's the game for me to win the game? And for them to win the game is to graduate and get a good job. So they figured out, okay, so I have to take these courses. And to get through these courses, I have to complete these assessments. And so on these assessments, I need to get this grade. So what I need to do on this, to get this grade on this assessment, is I need to do this, get this grade. And so you cut out all the extra stuff, okay? This is not on the test. It's not going to be tested. I'm not going to waste my time with that because that's not going to help me win the game. I'm making a real kind of broad generalization or statement here, but I think if I was in one, I think back when I was in school and I had the same sort of mindset. I mean, I knew what I had to do, and I did what I had to do. Now, the rules have changed somewhat, a little bit, for our students, but I think that's still the game. Okay, so now, I'm going to come back and setting this up. So this was, what in the world does this have to do with anything? And I think this kind of ties into a lot of the stuff that we said that causes this lack of engagement or lack of strength. So when I was an undergrad, I lived in a fraternity house. We had fantasy basketball league. And this was when they were kind of very first started. So two of my pledge brothers actually ran it. And the way they ran the thing was, this is how we did it. We went through, we picked our teams. And the way the scores were posted, okay, so the next day, those two pledge brothers took the newspaper. And they went through everything, so they calculated, okay, so I remember we had Isaiah Thomas and Magic Johnson. While we drafted two great point guards. And we got the most points in assists, the most points for points, or not points, most for assists and most for steals. But we got basically 0 for rebounds and extra points and shooting average and stuff. But, so they would go through this, okay, Isaiah Thomas, they you got 5 assists, times 1 is 5 points. 22 points times 1 is 22. Added it all up for every player. I think there were probably 8 teams in this league every day. So they would spend all that time doing it, and then they would write on a piece of paper and post it on the board every single day. They spent, all this time. Now, the thing is, we didn't know I mean, Tommy and I, my best friend and I, we didn't know where we stood that day until, like, basically we got out of class, then we came back and after lunch, because they usually do it over lunchtime, we looked at the score and there it was. Today, though, if you play in a fantasy basketball league, who plays the fantasy basketball league, what do they need to know to find out where they are? You just log into the computer book right then, right there. If you want to make the trades, so if you make the trades, make it in right then, right there. We did, so the only way we can make trades, and we had a set time at night. We only did it like once a week, so Wednesday nights at 6 o'clock. If there were any trades or stuff going on, you're dropping players, y'all gather in the living room and we would make the trades. So the whole point behind this is a really long way around to coming to this whole point. And really just kind of tangential to the whole thing is that when we were all in school, when we were in class, the rest of our lives were basically on hold. We didn't do our fantasy, we didn't have the choice of doing fantasy basketball. We didn't have the choice of shopping on eBay for whatever it is we wanted to. We didn't have the choice of Facebook. We didn't have the choice of texting. Basically, you were there, you were captured. Choices were limited. Now, yes, you know, we drift off and you disengage. You did have a few choices. So you had the crossword puzzle that was in the newspaper, and if you smuggled in any other type of other reading that you would kind of place inside your textbook, you had your textbook up. The rest of the you had your textbook, but on the inside, you had, you know, a comic book or whatever else. You had those. But our students' lives now are not on hold, ever. Never. Never on hold. To the point, and we talked a lot about cell phones. You know, the state has shown that a large percentage of younger, so we're talking even high school now, to sleep with their phone and check it multiple times throughout the night for messages, whether it's Facebook or text messages. An alarming percentage that do that. So their lives aren't even on hold when they're sleeping. So when they're in the classroom, all this stuff is going on, and it's constantly going on, and they can find out where they stand and what's going on with it. So that is, I think, the big piece. When we talk about digital distractions, but I think that's the underlying piece. Is the rest of their life, the outside world is always going on, and they can get to the rest of their life whenever they want. And for the most of them, and I probably speak for 95%, the rest of their life is more exciting than their life in the classroom. Not that they don't necessarily value it, no, they've got to do it, but it's just more exciting to doing this other stuff. I would rather be, you know, racing up a mountain in mud right now than doing this. I value this and I like it, but that other is more exciting. But it's on hold. I can't do that. But they can into the rest of their lives. Any thoughts or comments on that? All right. So now, let's take it away. So what are our students saying about us? Yes.
Before we go to that,
Yes.
would possibly trying to take away some of these choices then enhance the classroom atmosphere of engagement? I mean, we've talked about this back and forth a little bit. People have talked about, limit laptops, so maybe get Facebook out of the, I mean.
Well, and there are advantages and disadvantages, and I can argue both sides. I can say, yes, remove the digital devices from the classroom. You remove the distractions.
I mean, we already have policies saying no cell phone use, for example.
Right.
Or you can't, I mean, so we've made certain policies, but we've thought other ones will be beneficial to the class, like using your laptop. But if it's not really being beneficial at all to that person, then we've taken away, we've defeated the whole purpose of giving them that laptop for that class.
So I'm going to save this one too. This is sort of one of those questions.
Oh, we're coming back to this later?
We're going to
Okay.
come back to that, and I think if we go through some more of this discussion, then this will add pieces to that discussion. So we're definitely coming back. All right, so first of all, I don't know what the blank slide's for. I want to ask you, sort of the things of what causes you, so now we're going to look back on you now. What causes you to disengage in a seminar, meeting, and presentation like this? Before I say kind of for our students. So we all disengage in meetings and seminars. stuff we've already talked about. So what are the things that cause you to lose attention?
You know,
Instructor sitting behind the podium, you can't see him.
Can't see the presenter, okay?
Reading off slides, reading out loud.
Reading the slide, yeah.
Reading slides, okay. Wes?
Very monotonous voice.
I'm not.
It's
Lack of excitement of their material.
So, I'm just gonna say that, like it's meaning that the presenter doesn't really,
They don't look like they're reading.
they don't have.
Yeah, they're
Right.
non-enthusiastic.
Okay.
Not
Yes.
enthusiastic.
Okay.
you don't talk about yourself, like the things you like doing. I'm just joking. Well, I mean, when you know, well, I'm just saying, I mean, when you know the person better, you feel, you know, you feel like, oh, he's like one of us, or whatever. I mean, it can be advantages and disadvantages to that, so.
So I'm actually gonna come back to that too.
Material is boring.
Material is boring, okay. And boring because
It doesn't engage
It's just
me
boring.
in a sense, it's not my cup of
It's like
tea.
organic chemistry. It's like,
And I think, no, like, it's a very valid point. Having a class teaching organic chemistry, and Matt can attest to this, it's a class that so many students take because they have to.
Yeah.
To go into either pharmacy, medical, dental, veterinary, everything. And so engaging them is a difficult task. So, yes, the material for 95% of the class, they find it boring. So it is exceptionally challenging, you know, so there's little tricks you have to do.
And so, and I'm going to say this for, you think when you go to a professional meeting, and there are different sessions, and you choose which sessions you go to or don't go to, and think about all of the sessions you've chosen to go to, and you get in there, and, 5 minutes into it, you're disengaged. This is something you chose to go to, like you talk about, this interests me.
It's like something that
You're
you
very
already know,
disappointed.
like nothing new.
Yeah, okay, nothing new, right?
You're very disappointed about it. But you were looking forward to it.
Discipline, nothing new, so that's kind of the same. Okay. Understanding and that you don't even know what the
Whatever the
topic.
material is.
Okay.
You
So
know,
it's over your head or somewhat to where, okay, you just sort of give up because you don't have a clue what they're talking about.
You have personal life professionals.
Personal life, okay, yeah.
My kid is, have a doctor's
I only slept for 3 hours.
yeah, some of the same things the students have, like, I mean, you know.
The need to multitask, like I totally relate with the girl who put up the piece of paper that says, I multitask because I have to. That's me, obviously.
Some because you're being a pharmacist also, if you're on the bench, for example, and you are multitasking like crazy. So some of it is not necessarily a bad thing, some of it's actually a necessary function of your job when you get out. So to be a good multitasker is somewhat necessary to be highly employable and successful also.
Especially a good multitasker, exceptionally well organized.
That's
I don't know.
No, there's no, it's either great organization or a peer organization. Because if you know you have to do this description, and you also have to grade this exam, and you prepare the next one, and your pad is organized. Versus, oh, I forgot 2 of the 3 things I was supposed to do. So
No,
it's
but
some
that is
organization.
true, an organization goes hand in hand with mistakes also, especially in our profession. So I have to attest to that, with my observation from hospital work and retail, not so much, it's a little different dynamics, but it's very important.
Anything else that makes you disengage?
I'll let Natalia go
Oh,
first.
sure.
Presenter not making an effort to know the audience in advance.
Okay. Down, don't understand the audience.
One presenter doesn't make an effort to know. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
You know, when I was a student, I mean, I can attest to the fact that, I mean, if you're continuously listening to lectures from like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., you automatically do get distracted, you know, so attention span, everybody has a problem with that.
If the lecture's between 1 and 3 p.m.
So there's a certain downtime. So your natural body, your natural rhythm.
Yeah.
And then at 3 o'clock, you need your coffee.
Yeah.
Showing where how it applies to your life too, when it's something more abstract, and you know it's gonna help them, how it's gonna help them.
Okay, so not applicable, or at least perception. Yeah.
No, because it's not perceived to be applicable, it's like, it doesn't excite you, like if someone talks about, you know, quantum theory, I personally think that's the coolest thing ever, I don't understand a word of it. I've never dealt with it, it's just like, whoa.
So, all right, so, not exciting, okay. I'll give you sort of the example here, I may be jumping ahead of myself. Those last two things when you think of it. So, in the management course I teach several topics. I teach the financial piece, teach a lot of the organizational behavior stuff, the marketing, and then I teach kind of personal finance, and I teach so personal finance, so there's 2 lectures that I give that by and far there's much more engagement. So one of it is the personal finance, because that's a big deal to them right now, because they're staring at the debt, they're staring at 3 years of debt, and now they're getting ready, it's like, okay, I'm going to start paying this back in a year. How am I going to do that? What am I going to do with all this money? So that's a big thing. They're also, a lot of them are getting married, and they're looking to buy homes. Should they rent? Should they buy homes? So they get really engaged in that. The other one, which really, this has surprised me, I guess, is I do a social media lecture on social media in the professions. So we talk, and actually sometimes it spans into kind of 2 1 hours, but have them looking at now social media from the flip side. So now you're the employer, you're the boss, you're the manager, you're the owner, whatever thing you want to take. Now you're looking to hire people, or you have people working for you. And I give them different scenarios of things, and I put up just mock profiles, Facebook profiles of things that you see. I said, now, would you hire this person? Would you not hire this person? Is it right for you to look at this? Would you look at it? Someone showed you, does it make a difference one way or the other? So get into a lot of those scenarios. When I get into that topic, there are people talking back and forth. They're engaged as ever, and some people are talking, and I'm looking at them, and I was like, well, I've never seen you in this class before. I don't even know who you are. People that I honestly don't have never, for whatever reason, in that class of 130, there's always some students that just sort of blend in, and I'm looking at them, and I'm not even sure they're supposed to be in the classroom. That one, but I think kind of hits those points there is 2, 1, it's applicable to them because they're living that. And it's exciting to them because, once again, they're living that as something that they do. I think you can't make everything applicable and exciting. I mean, that's some things that are easier to do.
I was thinking mismatched expectations. So I walk into a presentation thinking it's going to be about one thing, and when they start talking, it's now gone into something totally different.
Mismatched. Okay, yeah, that's
Title's misleading or the abstract.
most abstracts, they all sound real good, right? Because you have to write them really good to get accepted, and then anything else. Okay, so in the second part will be kind be, because it's sort of it's the opposite. So what are the things? Okay, rather than just saying the opposite of this, anything that keeps you engaged in a meeting or presentation. So any other?
Full videos.
Okay, full videos. And?
Well, something that's constantly forcing you to interact, like what you're doing with us. You keep asking us questions.
So kind of forced. You don't really want to interact, but I'm making it.
Well, your method's working. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
The energy of the presenter.
Okay, high energy, all right. Have any of you ever seen Tony Robbins present I watch him present. It's like, man, I wish I could present like he does. I mean, he's just, if you've ever seen him, like one of my favorite talks is one of his TED Talks. If you've ever seen TED Talks of him presenting that, it's just he is high energy, high exciting, man, I don't even care what he's talking about. I'm just like, I'm just engaged. I have no idea, you know, sometimes I don't even have any idea, but that high energy is key. What else?
For someone who's engaged in their audience, you know,
Oh, okay.
it's kind of.
Okay, engage, all right, yes. Engage with the audience.
Also engage with the material too.
Okay, and with material.
I'm excited about it.
So
Be
you,
infectious.
so it's kind of like you go, like you actually show that you do want to be there and you like talking about whatever it is versus, okay, here I am, I'm supposed to teach this, or I'm supposed to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about it, and we're going to leave. What else?
I think when the practicality of the information is demonstrated.
Okay.
It's perceived as a harmful or it's detrimental if you do not. I did not listen.
Okay.
This will be for
All
test.
right,
Yes.
there's
Wait,
consequences.
Ooh, this would be a good exam question.
Yeah.
We'll be on the test, everything's on the test.
Well, I think coming back to Matt, what Matt was saying, like makes the material itself interesting. Because some material you might not see any practicality. Because I remember when I was in, 8th and 9th grade, I hated math, but then I had a professor who was so good at teaching me math, teaching us math, that I just began to love it after that. It's, you know, it's like, you don't see, it's so, like, how can you really make that exciting, right? And then she still did it. And after that, I just loved it. I would love to do the problem sets.
So, yeah, an example, I'll give a personal example that I give a lot is when I was getting my degree in finance, I actually considered going to law school. Thank goodness that did not happen, but I considered it because of one professor that I had. So there I had two law classes I had in my program which I had to take. There was business law 1, business law 2. I had business law 1, boring as heck, it's just reading all this, legal rules and the procedures and all that. And it was, okay, fine, but it was nothing that interested me whatsoever, didn't even think about it. I got to the second one, and it was the professor himself who had been an attorney for a long time. He'd been an attorney in Atlanta. His firm represented Ted Turner. And so he basically taught law by telling stories, legal stories. And he was so different than the previous professor who stood behind the podium and maybe wrote on the boards and the things. He kind of showed up and we had a little podium, not very much different than this. And he would just sort of kind of prop himself up on there and just start by telling stories and bringing principles out. And he was telling stories, I still remember some of these. So much so that I went from not caring anything about that, I'll never even cross my mind, to like, I might want to be an attorney, I might like this kind of stuff. So it switched me that degree that I considered it and, even took some different classes to kind of go that route. Okay, anything else? All right, so now, you said what you've chosen, so now let's kind of look at what those students have said. So like I said, these were, get the concept, so these were students who just finished their third year and getting ready to go on active rotations. They were doing my course, they had their grades, so there was nothing, there's nothing for them to gain or lose but help. Now also, not only is that it's because the students I just finished teaching are the ones that I know the best, I've also found that over time, getting opinions from students after they get through that third year is different than the opinions and things they will give you beforehand. And they change drastically. We have a lot of students come in for teaching rotations, and I work with them. And so, asking them questions, the same kind of questions you would have asked them informally after their second year or the mid of their third year, they change their answers. So after they cross that line, now they're in rotation side, it's, oh, you're too easy on those people. You need to make them do more. Those tests need to be harder. Give them assignments, make them show up, and they take a completely different stance once they're on the other side of the fence than when they're there. They will never say, you know, you need to do more assignments, or this is a good assignment. It's, you know, no, this is too hard, you know, back it off. But once they cross that line, it's be hard on them. They're just whiners, they're just crybabies. The people that they've basically been defending throughout in themselves, and just, they're a week removed from that line that they changed. So this is sort of why I asked, because I think I get better kind of responses. So one of the things, let's see if I got this here. So why students disengage? Okay, so reading from stuff. So I've kind of, this is not like I just wrote down everything they said. This is sort of the compilation of all of them. And if one person's kind of said one thing and the rest of them didn't echo it, this is not included. This is the general themes that kind of come across. It's very informal. So read from slides, number one. It was almost to a T. The very first thing I would ask them, this was the very first thing that they would say, read from slides. Okay, every single one. All but one of them, actually. Another one that came, and I just used this amount, and I think this probably must have come from one particular professor, because they mentioned the number a couple of times. This is 120 something for a 15-minute lecture. And so they said, in this case, there are so many slides, it's like I can't keep up with that amount of stuff. They give up, and they say, what do you think they say? Okay, there's 120 slides, what do you think they say then? They give up, they disengage during the lecture, and what are they going to do next?
Study for themselves.
They're just going to study them later. It's because I can't keep up now, I'll just read later. So they disengage. That kind of goes along with that kind of too much information. It's presenting too much information at one time, it's overload, I can't keep up, then therefore I just try to study later. So the other thing that comes up, a lot of discussion on handouts. A lot of discussion from different styles, because we all have different styles of handouts. Some people will say, you print your PowerPoint, boom, there's the PowerPoint file, that's your handout, exactly what you see me presented. Some give no handouts, that's very few. Actually, there's one. I say none. So there's one person who Dave had him in classes probably the same way he teaches pharmacy law. Doesn't give handouts because he's the old school of, to be an attorney in the legal thing, and this is his way, is you've got to learn how to capture information as it comes and process it without going back and looking at it later. So his process is no handouts. And I will tell you right now, students despise that policy. They may learn from it. I don't know. I can't speak to that as none of us. They may learn better from that, not having enough, so they have to pay attention. They despise it for the fact that sometimes they feel they can't listen to him and take the notes at the same time. And that is, right, for a lot of us, or most of us, or maybe even all of us, there were no handouts going through school. So we had to capture everything. Anything that we wanted to study for, we had to capture it. It wasn't like, okay, I can go back and get the rest of it later. We had to learn how to capture and pay attention. And so we said, well, why can't they do that now? So for one, they have no practice doing that at all. Nowhere, not even through high school or anywhere else, they don't have the practice. But two, and I think also sometimes we forget, is our professors, when they taught us, they didn't have PowerPoint. They had to write on the board if there were any writing. And so that slows you down, which then gave us time as students then to capture, because he has to write the stuff up on the board. That gives us the time to do it. Versus boom, putting up the slide with the 8 bullet points, boom, 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 boom. There's no writing. You're trying to write all that stuff down real quick because you can't do it. So that's kind of something to keep in mind, that difference. The handout, and most of the students told me this. I don't know if they were just telling, I think they were just telling me this because it made me feel good. Is my handouts are outline form. So if I have, let's say I'm talking about 6 things, I'll put as a main headline, and if there's any particularly long piece of information they need, maybe I will type that out, but most of the space there is just kind of blank spots. So if I'm talking about finance, for instance, and we're talking about liquidity, so I'll have liquidity, and I might have 3 bullet points. So okay, there's going to be 3 main points here that you need to get that cues them. most of those students today liked that because it forced them to pay attention. They didn't have notes, so it forced them. But it organized them so they didn't have to like do their kind of self-organization as they went along. I'll tell you on my instructor evaluations over time, I get a split. Probably people that comment on it, and these are just open comments. I get probably 65% would comment, if there's any comments about the hands, they comment positively. Said, I like this because it makes me pay attention and I don't doze off. Then I will get 35% to say they don't like it. Just give me everything you're going to say. That's essentially what it is. Okay, lingering. So lingering, this might have gone back to a particular person. Lingering on one particular slide. So you have the slide, you have the 4 bullet points up, you're talking about it, and you're just lingering and going on about the same thing when they have already processed everything. It's like, okay, yeah, one, yeah, got that, bullet point 2, got that, bullet point 3, yeah, 4, got it. I understand it all, and they're doing like I'm doing right now, lingering on this one slide. I typically don't do a lot of bullet points up front because you all have already, every one of you have already looked and read down the entire list. And you said, okay, yeah, I know, I understand one, so you say, yeah, I understand all of these, let's move on. I typically don't do that because just human nature. The stand behind the lectern was another one. The monotone, so you're seeing some of the same things that cause you to disengage because the students are disengaged. The language barrier is an issue of those that they don't necessarily understand. One that came across, and this is probably coming from 2 or 3 faculty members, is not using clicker information. So we use Turning Point. Some classes more than others, but some faculty members have just put clicker questions in. They don't really do anything with them. Which means they ask a question, the students answer, and then the faculty member will look at it, and okay, so since I understand, and then they just sort of move on. And so that has unintentionally signaled to them, okay, this is just a question just to do it. Here's my answer. Doesn't really matter because you're not going to do anything with that information. You're not going to talk about why we missed it or who was correct or not. The irrelevance is, okay, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not going to be a hospital pharmacist. I'm going to work for Rite Aid. I don't need to know anything about hospital pharmacy management or anything else hospital pharmacy does. The unreal simulations, and this got a lot of things. Unreal simulations meaning trying to put you in kind of real world settings with these paper-based cases. They're particularly talking about, I think in this case, lab practicals. You know, you're getting this paper information about a patient and the history and all this stuff and how you're supposed to do it versus this is not what it's going to be like when we get practice. I'm not going to canvas. You know, the patient's not going to come in and hand us this piece of paper and we're going to look at it and read it all off and then make a decision. You said that. For whatever reason, that causes them to disengage because they see it as not real. They see the process is important and they understand why, but it's just not real. Then the last one is a professor who is standoffish, meaning you kind of separate with that barrier. I'm the expert faculty member, you are the students, and so we kind of maintain this big bound. So this is what, so these students that I've told, they're ranging from some of the best students, middle students, and some of the bottom feeders, so we can call them. So this is, across the board, and they were pretty much all consistent. There wasn't anything different. There maybe not anything surprising. Is there anything there that surprises you, any one of them? Probably not after you sat through and thought about this. So obviously some of the things I take from this, for my own personal teaching, is don't read from the slide. I look at this and say, okay, I made mental notes for myself of the things not to do. Doesn't necessarily mean if I don't do all of those things that they're going to be engaged, but at least it may prevent some of the disengagement. Okay, so now let's go to why the students stay engaged. So I think this is more, this is probably the bigger thing. This is where I got some information, some better information. So one, ease into it. And what they mean by ease into it, and this was probably majority of the students that rather than faculty member coming straight in and it's 10 o'clock for 10 o'clock class and start straight into the lecture, that they loosen people up first. Loosen them up by talking, asking what you did for the weekend or telling a story of some sort, so that they started paying attention immediately because it was something not class related to a story to loosen them up, so they were paying attention immediately versus going straight to the lecture. And so there's some research on this. There's one research study on attention. So when you hear this study of attention spans are like 7 to 10 minutes, that's been passed down for a long time. And you go back to that original research, it really is not a very good research study. You can say 7 to 10 minutes. Could be more, could be less. But one fairly recent study about paying attention, students paying attention in class. Some researchers had some glasses that tracked eye movement. And so, there's obviously some flaws with it, but, and I didn't recall the exact methods, but they tracked eye movement, so then they tracked attention using, they tracked were students paying attention or not based on the eye movement. And so there were kind of 3 things that changed the attention span. And they said the attention wasn't like we always seem to think that students would pay attention like that first 10 or 15 minutes and then they doze off. That wasn't the case. There wasn't any like you start and your attention's here and then you drop off. Attention could go any from the very beginning. It could be down here to start with, it could be up here, it could be in the middle. But the 3 things that changed that attention. So anybody want to guess what one of those 3 things might have been? Or any of the 3 that changed, the student would pay attention, that the attention changed, like there was a spike in attention.
Personal story.
Okay, so plus humor. So anything humor, something humor they would, so boom. And so it probably could, kind of got along with our story. That's probably just very similar type of thing.
Start asking questions, so I guess.
Okay, so ask a question. So very similar to that is, and there probably was one too, but the thing that they pointed out the most was standing close to someone. Anytime the professor walks in, sit close to someone, boom, attention, you're a high alert. The professor said you're a high alert. The 3rd one was, and this could be where this one falls in. The 3rd one was when information that was presented that was not on the slide. Does it make sense? Okay, you've seen the slide, you've already read it. But now what's the additional, what's the real thing? What are we really getting here? So this comes into what am I really getting out of coming to class? If it's on the slide and there's nothing else, then it doesn't mean I'm going to come to class. And we sort of talk about this, but if there's something more, this is where it comes. So those were the 3 things. And so that attention, it was like this the whole way. And it spiked at those different points. I think they also alluded to that attention would be there briefly when slides change. But so when the new slide comes up, everybody's up. You read it, and eyes back down to whatever you're doing. Okay, so laid back but in control. And so they really wanted to explain this. So as someone who is, not all rigid, it's pretty easy on what laid back is. But not so much that the students just ran over top of you. Meaning students ran over top of you, mean lots of talking in class. So in a class size of 130, it's very easy for 4, 5, 6 students in the back to be talking that disrupt, the 15 or 20 or 30 around them. The professor who didn't take control of that situation, then they start losing control. And it's just like a downward spiral, you lose control. The injected humor, obviously that was part of it. So approachable and personable are very similar. So that meant they felt comfortable. So this is, we can get back to this comfort level with the instructor as a person. And they felt like they could go and ask any question at any time, and they're not going to be berated for not paying it. It's like, why didn't you pay attention? I talked about that. They're not going to be berated. So they felt comfortable going to that person at any point in time. The personable part and the act like a person, not a professor. So you can take from this, professors aren't people. So the personable part was they stayed engaged with instructors and faculty members who talked to them, maybe before class or after class, just about stuff. Didn't have to be about class material, just about, they had a sweatshirt on that says some school or something, you know, and just talking to them like normal people. And so that endeared to them, and this was across the board, that endeared to them a likability factor, that they liked the person, and because they liked the instructor as a person, they're more apt to pay attention to them in class, versus someone that they didn't like as a person or they didn't know as a person, because now they were just this professor, this anonymous professor that it doesn't matter if this person likes me or if I like them or not. They don't know who I am. They don't care. It doesn't matter. It's just an institution. They're part of the institution versus the person. And one of the things they point out over and over and over and over again, which is why I did this. So in the beginning, I told you I showed all those pictures of me. And I don't do that. I normally do that. But I'm going to start doing it now, and I started it today, and I started it yesterday. Because almost every one of them said, because the professors who told stuff about themselves and showed that they were a person, we engaged with them more. And they gave some examples of some different people. And they gave specific examples. Dr. So-and-so would come in and would tell us about their child every day, or we start the class. And we would talk with him. He would tell us about what he did this weekend, or he would show pictures of his vacation. And that's a change, I think, from several years ago when I think the philosophy was, if a professor, you start talking about yourself and your personal experiences and what you did on the weekend during class time, someone might call you and say, well, what does this have to do with our class? Why are you wasting our time? And that's some of the responses that they had gotten back after first evaluation or force evaluation then, versus now, there's a real feeling of they want to know you as a person. They want to feel comfortable with you.
Maybe I'm slightly cynical here, but I think that they value that not because they're getting to know us, but in a 50-minute lecture, now there's only going to be 40 seconds. And that first 4 minutes is not going to be on the exam.
So maybe that's it. Maybe now they don't have to, they only have to stay engaged for 47 minutes, so they stay engaged longer. So that was kind of the general feel as they really kept coming back and back and back to that as being the person. So the handouts are crucial. The handouts determine how much attention they pay in class. If the handout has everything I need to know, everything you say, I'm zoning out. And they said, and they asked them, well, how do you know this? Well, you can basically learn after that first exam what it is. So after that first exam, they based it. If everything's there in the handouts that you need to know for the exam, boom, that's all I need to know. Give me the handouts, I'm done. If the handouts don't contain everything you need to know, then that means more attention has to be paid because now I have to keep the notes for myself. And I have to pay attention, otherwise I miss something. They also stay engaged from the professor who asks questions. And not just ask a question, so I ask you a question and then no one answers and then I answer it. I said, don't do that. Because we learn when you ask the question, do you really want us to answer or are you going to answer it for us? And if you're going to answer it, then we're not going to answer it. So it's ask the question, and maybe, and so I delve into this a little bit further. So you ask a question, it's a difficult question, nobody answers it. Don't just answer it for them, rephrase the question or give some prompts or give some hints to get them to go. The inserting change was kind of the theme that came out. So, you know, in a lecture format, however your style is to go through, if you're changing things up every once in a while, so you're inserting a video or you're asking a question is different versus you get into a steady sort of flow. Everybody knows what you're going to do, and you just start to zone out after a time because it's, you just kind of get in that thing. Then the last one, that was a lot, is doing stuff. Stuff was anything. Stuff was making you solve a problem, making you look up information, making you do something actively. It's pretty clear. If you're having to do something, you're engaged with that material because you have to. Any thoughts? Yes.
It's interesting. Last year I got on my course evaluation. One of the learners wrote, why did we have to do these stupid activities? And they were so juvenile, and that was the tone of the comment, that, you know, the person would have preferred just to sit back. And I was like, ugh.
And so, and I want to speak to this.
That's probably the same person.
Why are you doing it? So this is the same type of feedback we get back, and I think this is the kind of first and second years, and first and second years, you don't get it so much later. When we do end of year assessment, end of year evaluation, so it's just the entire year. What was good? What did you not like? What was your heart support? Some of the basic stuff. So I said on assessment committee and chair, so I'll look at this every year. And it's the same things came up. But one of the things that's very, I don't know, disappointing to some degree, it comes up when they're in themes, is, okay, so they don't like to write. So the things, the top things, the things that didn't go well, so it says writing assignments, they don't like to write, reading assignments, they don't like to read, and anything they have to present. So they don't like to talk. They don't like to read, write, or talk. Which is what we take from that every year. Once they kind of cross that threshold, then I think most of them can look back and say, yeah, okay, doing those things did help me learn. I didn't like doing it. Really didn't like it, but I'll admit it did help. So I think, like you said, they don't necessarily like it because they have to do it.
Are we going to discuss any of these later on? Because I think the most crucial one for me over here is the handouts. And the reason why I think it's crucial, especially in our integrated courses, where we have different faculty members teaching within a span of 3 weeks. And if they're just beginning to figure out how one professor teaches, and we have only 2 exams for many of these. So if they're going to like play it by ear and see how the first exam goes, then they've lost half their grade based on that. And so I think it's crucial, because if they think one person's only going to ask everything that's on their slide, whereas another professor might want them to dig deeper and learn, you know, take notes in addition to what's on the slide, that might change the entire ball game. And so maybe, I don't know if we can have some discussion amongst us as faculty itself as to, I don't know what the solution to this is, if anybody has any ideas.
Yes, we will. Okay, well, let's just do it right now. Right now. So, and I've been talking for a while, so I'd rather hear some of you all talk. Thoughts on handouts?
Because for me, I know personally, I mean, handouts are like bullet points. I want them to listen to what I'm saying, add additional things, and go and read the textbook. You know, that's how I teach. But in an IPC course, we're now having like sometimes 8 different instructors. It's over 3 weeks. Some of these only teach 1 or 2 lectures. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
handouts, as long as it doesn't fill in all the information. So like if you have like a handout that's a version of your PowerPoint slide, and it's just the exact same thing, they just print it off, then it's a waste. But if you have a handout which is a truncated form of your PowerPoint slide, so they have to fill in information, so they have no choice but to attend and to listen and to like, oh, okay, that's what he's talking about, and like they need space for photos, if you have like a scheme, like what Dipperman does, he does like cascade events and stuff like that, a place for them to do it, and it's in a, as you said, a logical order, you're doing the organization form, then handouts are useful. Now if you're talking about handouts as in a, okay, here's a original research paper I want you to read, well, as long as they know that there's a tangible reason for doing it, like, oh yeah, here's another piece of paper, and oh, we never went over it, you know, we never talked about it then on, and of course, then anything they come out later with is going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to be another one of those.
yeah, no, that I understand. I'm just talking about like the different styles, and within like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, so that, I mean,
Well, I remember
just,
each faculty member is going to have their different style of teaching. Some like handouts, some don't. And we can't like saying, you know, there's something called like an intellectual or teaching non-autonomy. You know, I'm not going to force you to have handouts if you don't like handouts.
no, I'm just, because they see that as the most crucial thing and how they're going to study. So that's what I'm getting to. It's their saying.
Well, that's things
You
that
know,
then
if they-
hopefully as faculty develop, that hey, this handout thing is what they like, and then they'll naturally want to do it. But forcing a faculty member to do handouts is against a law, but, you know, it's against your own personal right to teach.
Right.
And hopefully as you go along, you're like, hey, this may help the students, and that's the whole idea, is to make sure that they're graduating and they're knowing the material and they want to be there and all that stuff.
Can't hear you.
I said I didn't know that there was an issue. So some people, you're saying some people don't like handouts, or aren't?
No. What he said was that if they think that they just have to study whatever's on your handouts, like for example these bullet points, they're not going to take any more notes. And then if your questions actually come application-based and they're just not like identify my 5 bullet points, they're screwed on the exam, basically, if they weren't taking notes or weren't listening or, you know. And many of them realize that only after the first exam because they're now able to connect the questions to your handouts. But because when we have 8 or 9 different instructors over a 2-week period, everybody has a different style and different way of generating questions from what they taught. So
I think the problem goes a little bit deeper than that. I mean, I'm just hypothesizing because I'm not taught IMC course. But perhaps, you know, lack of communication among instructors and the way, you know, the material is delivered as opposed to how they're being assessed. So if you're not covering problem-based cases, and then you're asking them, you're not taking time during the class to actually apply to a case scenario, and then often enough, but then you're asking them to do that on the exam. I mean, that's just my theory at this point.
Have you ever asked anybody to show you their notes? They're terrible. They are god awful. Okay? So if I were to give you a bulleted slide and say, they miss, you know, they see what's on the slide, but when I've asked them, what did you write down? Nothing. You gave me a slide with things on it. Well, why was I there talking? And there's a disconnect there.
yeah,
And
that's the problem.
And regardless of the style, like Ron was talking about, everybody has their academic freedom to present how they choose. There's a fundamental lack of note-taking.
Yeah.
When any of you go in class, you start lecturing from your slides, do you tell the students everything's not on the slide and you're expected to take notes on this? I mean, when I've gone in, my slides are like what Ron first describes. In fact, the biggest complaint I get from students is I don't put enough on the slide. Gee, you got a lot of blank space. Well, the first thing I tell them when I come into class and lecture using those slides is there's a lot of blank space, because there's going to be a lot of things happening on the screen that you have to put down on the slide. And it's up to you. I tell them my philosophy of learning is that it's the connection between your hand writing and the signal to the brain from there. And I tell them, you've got to write notes. So I explain it to them when I start. Now, if you just walk in and start lecturing from a bunch of slides and don't inform them what you're telling, what you expect from them from the slides, how the hell are they going to know?
Yeah.
So you yourself have to go in there and tell them, this is my slide, this is how I present them to you. You're expected to take notes on them and fill things in, because I'm not going to fill them in for you. And then you do that. And the way to force them is you don't post the complete slides on Echo afterwards. They have to go to Echo and see how the slide got filled in themselves. That's the one way with Echo. I didn't have Echo before, so I would not post the completed slide.
See, I feel like
Can you
that's
do
like,
that?
that's a,
Can you? I'm sorry.
No, I said I did not have Echo before, so I did not post it. Now, when you do fill the slide in, Echo shows that.
Yeah.
Right, that's the main problem.
So I need 2 versions.
But you can do it. You can keep Echo from doing that if you want to.
Yes, but the thing is, that means they're going to have to actually go, if they miss your class, they'll have to go through Echo and watch the whole thing.
So you would have to have 2 versions.
Yes.
Yeah, they get a PDF file of the slides that I've taken all the crap out of. Some of them only have a title on the slide. And I used to compile a complete handout that was given to the class before class started, all the slides for the semester. But the biggest complaint they gave me was, you didn't put enough information on there.
No, but Jim, what they're saying is once they go on Echo, they see a teacher version, So they don't take notes anyways, because they're
But
like,
you-
we'll just go to Echo.
But you have the option, you don't have to have it
Yeah.
show
Well, they
up on
can see
Echo.
it, but they, what are they gonna study from? I mean, they.
You don't have to show it up on
Yeah.
Echo though, if you don't want it to.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really, Jim, I'm like baffled right now. I mean, like, I don't remember a single professor telling students in school, undergrad or pharmacy school, that, hey, now it's time to take notes, and like, I feel like it's almost instinctual. Like,
Well, it's supposed to be, yeah, it is, but
But
we're
like,
dealing
when
with
I-
a different person. We're dealing differently now. When I went to school,
But I mean, but that's
you
what I
know,
mean, like,
you
maybe
took
we
notes
shouldn't-
because you were expected to.
But maybe during orientation, they need to be then reminded that during class, if there's something on the notes that you don't know, or that the professor's saying that you aren't aware of, then you need to write that down. But I feel like, I can't even imagine myself having to tell them, like, hey, if I'm saying something you don't know, you should write it down on
No,
paper.
no, I don't say that every time. What I say is when I come into class, when I've taught my own course, I come in the very first class and you go over the syllabus. And you're telling them what this class is, what the class is not going to be.
Right.
You know, I walk in and tell them Med Chem is going to be this, it's not going to be this. Okay? And then I explain to them my philosophy of how I expect you to learn in this course. And I spend a good 5 minutes or 10 minutes telling them, you're going to see a lot of slides. A lot of the slides are not going to be totally filled out. This is what I expect you to do with those slides. And I explain it to them. And that's it. That's the first day of class. I don't tell them at every slide, okay, now what shows up next is important. No, because I tell them that the very first day of class. Everything is important and it's all cumulative through the course. So I explain it to them in the introductory day, and then from that point on. But if you're going to go into a classroom and just walk in and start talking with slides, and you don't tell them what you expect them to get from those slides, don't be surprised that they don't know what to get from them. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just kind of wondering, like, I'm still like learning all that stuff. So when you guys do like study like that, like, do you have any like idea what types of handout is most effective for learners to get?
Depends on each
Is there like, you know, bullet pointing, everything's on there? Like, is there any studies out there?
There may be, but not that I'm aware of, because, like you said, we started to have different styles of teaching.
Well,
And so some is more conducive than others.
Again, from experience, 1 year I used PowerPoint slides, did that whole approach like that. They hated it. The class gives you evaluations and they complain about the PowerPoint slides. The next year I go totally, and half the class says they don't like the slides, half the class says they like it. Next year I go to a whiteboard presentation for the class. Rave reviews about how I thank God no PowerPoint and all this, and then others complaining there wasn't any PowerPoint. You don't win. It doesn't matter. It's like being a politician. You can't satisfy
But they
everybody.
all learn in different ways, so
Right.
you can't, there's never gonna be that, sort of end all be all of what everybody likes, because they all learn
Right.
differently.
And different disciplines are.
And the other thing you have to learn is don't pay so darn much attention to all the comments. Because if you add up all the comments, you find that the ones you're remembering the most are only a couple.
And they're the negative.
And they're the negative ones. You gotta take the whole thing and kind of look at the whole class thing, and you'll find out it's not so bad as it seems when you read your evaluation.
Speaking of styles of teaching, I mean, some of the students have come up and said that, once they have the professor for one class, then they know what to expect in the next class. I mean, I don't think it's a huge learning curve for the student to figure out what, he such and such is going to focus on how their style of question is. So
Well, just tell them to remember every time when they get a job, they're going to have different bosses showing up at different times, and you're going to have to get used to it.
Yeah.
So,
No, the
boss
problem
you
is,
have today is not the boss you're going to have in 6 months.
Really?
well, the problem again
Some
is
of you
not
are hopeful.
the problem again is not for like a 3-month-long course. We're talking about like a 2 or 3 week long courses where you have, well, I mean, in respiratory, how many instructors did we have? Like, I mean, 7? Or, I mean, that's the issue. Like, I mean, these things are great, and I want, but everybody has their
But
different.
the number of instructors is a different issue because
Yeah.
there are too many instructors in some of these courses.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
No, that's what
from
I'm
the
talking
learning
about.
itself. But that's a separate issue. That's an issue that we need to address.
But the same seven professors have taught them in other classes, I don't see.
Not all of them. Sometimes they're showing up brand new at an ITC.
We usually use dice to assign it, Tipton.
Huh?
We use dice to assign it.
Well, Diptum, and the other part too is that, and Lucia said it's a little bit different for each discipline. And remember that the group, there's only been one group here who's actually seen you, or who understood what you guys were going to do before they came in the classroom, and that was the 2016s. 2015 has no one to ask. The 2016 class asked about every one of you before they set foot in your class. They knew what immunology was going to be. They knew what Sudix was going to be.
You knew who to avoid.
They asked, how do they teach? What do they do with their handouts? How do they test? The class of 2015 right now is operating without a net because they have no one to ask. And they can't refer to another class because, as Lucia said, the modules are a little bit different. The disciplines are different. So the 15 group is kind of an outlier in the sense that they're going to operate without a net until they graduate. It's everybody behind them who gets the benefit of a little bit more information.
So I also don't have the people on rotation, like you said, who have that totally different perspective of, you guys have it easy. No one to say, except us.
Every graduating class says that.
Everybody has to go easy.
Right, but they don't have that graduating class, right?
Yeah, but every class in their graduating year, they always say that. And then once they're out of the job, they keep talking about how bad the students are coming out.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed.
So I am the impediment between you and lunch now, so I'm going to remove myself as the impediment. And I don't know where lunch is, you can talk.
Bring it back in.
Yeah,
Welcome to your